Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Burgundy and Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, right over there, you know who he is. I say it every week. It's my main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reg?
Yo. What's happening, Ken?
Not much. I think we've got a busier than normal middle of the season podcast. All right, a little
Really?
extra this week.
Really? I don't think much has happened since the last time we talked, man. I mean, we lost to Philly.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what I think the number one thing is?
Did I miss something?
Yeah. For Washington fans that follow closely Washington and everything around Washington and former players, they realize that Taylor Heineke is starting this week in Atlanta, and I'm sure everybody's rooting for him. That's got to be it. That's got to be it, right?
So that's what all the news about. I heard there was a little chatter, and so it's about the Taylor Heineke era starting in Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can't think so either, man. But I will say this though, real quick about if I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan and you drafted Desmond Ridder, and now you're gonna bench him for Taylor Heineke, man, I would be real concerned. You got problems. I think you got some problems.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into Atlanta's business because I haven't been watching that closely other than when we played. But I will say in the NFL, if you realize that the quarterback that you have is not the guy, the best thing you can do is move on. Washington did that with Haskins, and I think it's in the franchise's best interest. Now you got to give a quarterback time, but when you've made that determination, truly made that determination that he's not your guy, and I'm not saying that he's not down there in Atlanta, but when you decide that he's not, and you just got to move on because quarterback is such an integral position in this league that you can't have one dragging you down for years and years and years.
For sure. No, I totally agree. But Desmond Ridder is not injured.
Right.
He didn't get injured. Taylor came in, played well, and they're just going to leave it as a status quo. Now, this kid's getting benched. And so there's more to it than that. But to your point, I don't follow the Falcons closely like that.
I know it's been a lot of interceptions. I think he might be leading the NFL in interceptions, but
we're just familiar with Taylor Heineke, and if that's where you've turned to, I think he'll play well, and maybe we'll Drake London and Kyle Pitts would be a little more happier with him, but anyway, good for Taylor to be down in Atlanta and get an opportunity to start. So.
It just came across this wire that I saw. I don't know if you got anything to say about it or comment about it, but there was a couple trades in Washington. I didn't even realialize it.
What?
Yeah.
That's not what we do. That's not what we do.
I haven't read. I've kind of stayed off of social media. We're joking around here, but when the trade announcements were made on Montez, Sweat, and Chase Young, I mean, I saw the alert come in from ESPN, but I really didn't. I stayed off of Twitter. I stayed off of social media for the most part because I just kind of wanted to soak it in myself, and I looked up a few things that we can talk about here also, and I didn't want to get too terribly influenced by other people initially, but I would imagine it, considering what we talked about on our last podcast, we didn't think that either one would get traded. And now both of them have been traded. And I started to say, when is the last time Washington traded anybody during the season? I don't recall. I'm sure we have. I don't recall.
Well, to be quite honest, NFL teams trading at the trade deadline has something that seems to be a thing as of late. Typically, the NFL has never really do much about trade deadline. They always tell you, you can't bring someone in the middle of the season and expect for them to have an impact. So things like that typically happen in the off season. But I'd say within the past 5 years, you see a lot more of these trade deadline type trades. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of becoming more commonplace. So the fact that Washington hasn't done anything like that in years past isn't as shocking, just simply because it's not been a league wide thing.
Right.
But what's interesting is the fact that we don't typically participate in things like that happens around the league. So for us to be a little bit active at the trade deadline was a little surprising. But to your point, I think you and I were probably in the minority when it came to thinking that either of those guys would be traded. I think the majority of the people thought that at least one of them would be traded. And then to take it a step further, I think a lot of people are shocked that they both were traded.
Right. Right.
But I'll give you a chance, man. If you want to run down, I guess, just kind of what the package is, and then follow that up with just kind of your reaction and your take on the
Sure.
trade. And so the floor is yours, man.
Sure. Sure. Initially, I'll just kind of go down the list of how everything fell out. Not that I'm breaking any news here, but Montez Sweat was traded to the Chicago Bears for a second round pick this coming year. As it sits right now, Chicago has the third pick in the draft. So that would be pick number 35 overall for Washington. So not quite a first round, but it's just outside the first round as it sits right now. So that was a good move, a good pick. Clearly, and I would say for Montez Sweat and Chase Young both, there's a big question mark on whether Washington was going to try to sign either one of them, but Washington clearly made a decision that they weren't going to keep either one of them at the end of the season and decided to go ahead and get something now for them. And
Let me interject here on that.
yeah,
I certainly won't cut you off when you give me your thoughts on it, but
yeah,
supposedly the team was interested in re-signing Montez Sweat. And when the market started to get hot a little bit for Montez, the team felt like they couldn't walk away from a high second round pick. So they weren't intending to trade Chase. I mean Montez, but
Montez.
they couldn't pass over such a pick that the Chicago Bears were offering. So that's why they make that deal.
Well, I think not only that is when your own player, when you have your own player, you can talk, all season long, all off season, all last year with the agent and get an idea of what the cost is. And so my guess is with the cost of Montez and what they were wanting didn't fit into their budget and their plan, along with a high draft pick for him. And so yeah, so they pulled the trigger, and Montez is headed to the Bears. Then comes Chase Young. I don't know that beforehand I would have thought that Chase Young would have gotten more or less than Montez. I would have thought it'd been a little bit closer. You can say Montez maybe got more because of lack of injuries and some production and all, but I would have thought that it would have been closer to the same. But Washington traded him to San Francisco and got we'll call it a third round pick, but it's wedged in between the third round and the fourth round. It's a compensatory pick. It's one of San Francisco's compensatory picks. And so I would have thought that he would have gotten you a little bit more, granted, if they would have given you their third pick, they're going to be towards the end. So you're only talking about moving up 5 spots, maybe 3 spots. But anyway, that's what they ended up getting on Chase. Again, clearly they weren't interested. I'm going to say clearly they weren't overly interested in keeping Chase, or they wouldn't have had his. They let the option for the 5th year. They didn't pick that up, so it was kind of a prove it. And whatever he didn't prove that it was worth re-signing him next year, or to the franchise, he was worth a compensatory third, and they were fine with that.
Well, as you said, you stayed off social media. I did not. So I've been listening and reading and all those types of things. And it has become clear that outside of the DC area or the Commander fan base, Chase Young is regarded fairly high among a lot of people.
Agreed.
And I think as fans, we know that that's because his name, his he's a blue blood player, blue chip player out of Ohio State, number 2 pick overall in the draft, and you hear the name Chase Young. And us fans that have seen Chase over the past 4.5 years understand that he's Chase Young in name only. Has he been a bust? No, not even. Not even. I'm not even going to go there. The kid is still productive, but he's not lived up to the expectation I think that most people would have had out of a second round pick. And
Second
knowing that he
overall
was
pick, not second
second
round.
overall pick,
Second overall pick.
second overall pick, and knowing that he was going to command a high salary, which to your point, they probably had an idea of where his agent wanted. We failed to mention this on the podcast, but Chase Young and Montez Sweat both have the same agent.
Right.
So they have an idea of where Washington was going to be talking money wise, and probably Washington had an idea of where they were talking money wise. But it has turned out that from a national perspective, everyone thought that Washington would be able to get more for Chase Young. But the reality of it is teams were supposedly scared based on his injury. There's still concerns about his overall health, coming back from the knees, the neck, and just being injury prone. So teams were a little reluctant to give a lot for a guy who may be a 9-game rental. Now, fans were complaining about it, and it just never failed to amaze me that people want to say, that's all they got for Chase. Well, I'm pretty sure that if somebody would have gave him a first, they would have damn sure took it.
Right.
So the fact that they traded Chase Young for a third should tell you, dummy, that's probably about as where the market was for Chase Young.
Right.
What you should be looking at is the fact that they were willing to trade Chase for a third should tell you that there must be something else going on with Chase Young, that the team that drafted him number 2 overall was willing to move on from. That's what you should be focused on, not the fact that they only got a third. But at any rate, supposedly teams were scared off or had concerns about his injury, and that's why the market was a little bit lower for him as opposed to Montez Sweat. So that was the bit that you was missing by not being on
yeah, and I think when you look at both of them also, and what the teams that they went to, and what those teams where they sit right now. I mean, clearly Chicago is rebuilding, right? And Chicago has a lot of money in 2024 in their salary cap. If they're not the highest, they're the second highest. And so they've got money. I think they went and got Montez, and it wouldn't surprise me in the next week or two if they announce that they've got a contract worked out, and it wouldn't surprise me if they've already been talking. I mean, I would think that would be probably part of the deal. Go ahead, Reg.
Nope. So again, because I'm your boy. I got your back. So this is where we're going to say
my main man.
That's right, man. That's it. So you've been off, and apparently they've already talked to Montez about potential signing. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically he said he's not interested in doing anything quickly. He needs to basically see how things play out. So although Chicago probably wants to do a long-term deal, Montez is basically saying, let me just see how this plays out, because he may decide to want to enter free agency and play the market and still end up in Chicago.
Right.
Or he may find out and see who's willing to pay him more and maybe willing to go back, because supposedly he wanted to go to Atlanta, by the way. He's from the area. They talked about remember he missed some games due to the passing of his mom and I think his brother or something. And he grew up around the Atlanta area. And so he was hoping to go back to Atlanta because supposedly Atlanta was one of those teams that was interested in that had, I think, offered a third round, and it had the chance to become a second round, which is why Chicago supposedly stepped in and just said, we'll give you a second round pick. But Montez supposedly had wanted to go to Atlanta. Again, money talks. Let's be honest, money talks. Yeah. So at the end of the year, if Chicago is willing to pay him the bag that Atlanta's not willing to do, then he may stay in Chicago or he may go to a completely different team. But he basically said to the local media there that he's not thinking about anything right now. He just wants to get in here and see how things play out.
And that's
so there is no contract on the table.
And that's a big shocker because, Chicago's not in the playoff run. So why would you give him up a second round for him that isn't going to matter this year? You're trying to get him there so you can do all the negotiating now and like I said, potentially get a 2, 3, 4, 5 year signing of him. And so if he leaves, man, what an idiotic move by Chicago. Now Chase Young is a totally different deal, right? The 49ers have their own third round pick, and they have not one but two compensatory picks next year. So they're giving up one compensatory pick, and for that, they get Chase Young, who's in the rotation of an already very strong defense, and they're doing it to make a run for the Super Bowl. To give up a third round pick for you to take your dominating defense at times, take it to another level, or add another, a bullet in the gun type of phrase. Not a bad choice for them. Not a bad choice. Even if he doesn't sign, if Chase doesn't sign, and if they just make it to the Super Bowl, it was worth that third round pick.
Supposedly, again, not watching the 49ers very, very closely. Supposedly the back end of the defense is where they have trouble. And so although they can dominate a game, their defense has not played up to par, right? They've played great, but they've not played up to par. And so supposedly they're trying to stack and solidify their defensive front because the Bosa is getting double and triple team. And so now they're wanting to allow a guy like Chase to be able to kind of feast a little bit. But again, the expectation is, because nationally Chase Young's the number 2 overall pick, man, you get him one-on-one, he should be able to feast, right? Well, you talk to any Washington fan, will tell you Chase Young one-on-one doesn't feast on anybody. He can make some plays, he can do well, but he's not going to be that beast with one-on-one coverage like you think he's going to be. But that doesn't mean he's not going to play well in their scheme. I'm not saying that he won't be good for the 49ers. However, supposedly that was the mindset and why they chose Chase Young, so they can get more pressure on the quarterback because the back end of their defense is bad. So their front seven between their linebackers and hopefully their defensive front will make it easier for the back end of the defense.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to kind of what you briefly commented on there is what the 49ers have that Washington doesn't. I think their defensive line overall is better than Washington's.
Yes.
But what they have also that helps their defensive front is their linebackers. They've got a fantastic set of linebackers. So now Chase can freelance when you've got a safety valve of some linebackers that just fly through there. And if Chase only has to worry about one thing, about getting to the quarterback, he doesn't have to maintain his lane. He doesn't have to worry about a gap. Sometimes he will. It's not all the time, but if a lot of times if he just balls out and goes for it, they got linebackers right there that are ready to make the plays. And that's not the case in Washington. Washington is extremely weak at linebacker. And so again, I think we may see a little bit more from Chase because of that in San Francisco.
The scheme may allow him some flexibility and allow him to be creative and make some more plays. And so it may show up on the highlight reel that he's balling in San Francisco. But again, I don't wish nothing bad for these guys. In fact, I hope they go off and have good careers, man.
Absolutely. I agree.
That kind of deal.
I will say there was also a rumor. I mean, it sounded like it was a confirmed rumor that the Cleveland Browns were interested in bringing back Jacoby Brissett for a 6th round pick, but Washington, I guess, chose not to do it. Your thought on that, Reg?
I get it. I mean, I think what the value that Jacoby Brissett brings to the quarterback room for Washington in the growth for Sam Howell, I think was not worth a late round pick for Washington. Um, you know, I'm in the camp right now of letting this thing just kind of tear it down a little bit.
Mhm.
So this trying to push for the playoff narrative that Ron keeps talking about. We got 9 games left, and the NFC is everybody's bunched up together and all this. Even if we make it, we're not good enough to make any noise. So for
Right.
me, we're going to end up being in the middle of the pack once again. So keeping Brissett around to in case we're in the hunt, and then if Sam gets injured, Jacoby can keep this team going. Keep us going where? Keep us
Right.
going to 500. I mean, so for me, outside of the teaching Sam and helping Sam, I say trade him back, man, because he's on a 1-year deal. So
Yeah.
get you another 5th or 6th round pick, and you can use that and trade up and get you a 5th or something. I don't know, but to me, I probably would have made the trade or try to get something better for Jacoby. I don't know what all teams were offering for Jacoby. I can't imagine it was a 4th round pick, but
No,
certainly
no.
get the draft capital and keep it moving.
It's funny because
That's what I would have done.
yeah, I would say that if I didn't know any better, we were sitting in the same room together, and you were looking at my notes. You were cheating, like you did back in middle school.
I never
Um,
cheated.
we got video proof, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
never
It's
cheated.
very grainy. It's a very grainy video, but he was looking off of Billy's paper. I know he was. But uh, but yes, I agree. I would have probably pulled the trigger and gotten any draft capital that I could at this point. And the only exception is exactly what you said, is if I felt that there was enough value in him helping out Sam Howell be the quarterback that we hope he can be in the future. That would be the only 100% the only reason why I would have kept him. Anything other than that, Sam goes down. I don't at that point, I don't care who's the quarterback. Um, we're just going to finish out the season with,
Yep.
picking up whoever.
And supposedly it was the teaching and helping the growth of Sam Howell is supposedly the reason they didn't want to trade him. So
Yeah,
I
and you
hope
want you want a veteran quarterback for that, even if he's a veteran backup quarterback. You still want that in the NFL.
yes.
I made the joke to you after Montez and Chase Young were gone. I was like, man, hurry up and trade Cameron Curl, and that way we won't have any hard decisions with our own players in free agency, because he's the third of the big name free agencies for Washington that Washington's going to have to make a decision on. And so, while I'm sure Cameron doesn't like to see his friends Chase and Montez go, I bet you in the back, later that evening, he's like, maybe this makes it a little bit easier for me to get my money.
Yeah. Oh,
Doesn't
no,
mean
no doubt.
doesn't
No
mean they're
doubt.
going to sign him, but he's got to be sitting there saying it's a little bit easier now. That money
Yeah.
has to
I
get
mean,
divided up. There's less people here to divide that money up with.
yeah, I mean, he may not have thought that right away, but I think as the dust settle
Correct.
and he gets a couple days removed from this, probably because for all we know, this may spurn some conversation with his agent now, because now these moves have been made, so now we know we're not having to decide whether or not we're going to commit 20 plus million dollars a year to a defensive end. And because the guys that are on the roster right now aren't making that kind of money, and even if you draft somebody next year or go into free agency, you can go ahead and get Cam Curl's numbers on the books. But the cool thing about this, man, is when it's all settled, Washington ended up with 3 picks in the top 50,
Correct.
right? Which is great, and they now have 5 picks in the top 100, which again gives you some bargaining chips and some ways to move around. Which is going to be which draft assets. There's everyone's talking about the $90 million in cap space that Washington's going to have next year, which again is great. But we also have a ton of undrafted. I'm sorry, We have a ton of free agents. And I'm not saying that they're going to sign a lot of these guys, but you can't let everybody walk because you still got to fill your roster out. So I think the F.A. Abados, the Casey Two Hills, the James Smith Williams, the Cam Curls, all of these guys are going to be looking for paydays, along with Washington probably being players in free agency, unless after the season they decide to tear this down a little bit more and get more draft capital. So they won't use a lot of that cap space. But a lot going on.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to give a little bit of take myself on this whole deal, man. I was okay with this. I felt like Washington needed to do this. I talked about it a little bit on social media, and I was talking to some other people about it. And I quoted Eric Bieniemy when he talked about being comfortable being uncomfortable. And you started this podcast asking him, does Washington do this? No, we don't. But you know what? With the new ownership group that we have, and these guys invested $6 billion, man, and they're not investing $6 billion for things to be status quo. And for Josh Harris and some of those guys that have been Redskins fans growing up, they know what they're chasing. They know what the bar is.
Right.
And the bar is not being 500 year in and year out. And so they're coming in, especially with Josh Harris going through the process and now Philadelphia being a perennial playoff team every year, competitive, top 4 in the Eastern Conference, having home court advantage during the playoff with a chance to try to go win an NBA championship. That's what they're trying to create here, guys. So guess what? That means trading away some of your favorite players. That means trading away guys that you thought were going to end their careers here, and that's not the case. Those guys that you're referring to are the guys that allow you to get draft capital and allow you to hit reset. And so these moves were necessary.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and so for me, I've always maintained that I thought letting Chase Young walk, keeping Montez was probably the way I would have gone. But the fact that they traded Montez Sweat for a high second round pick, man, I can't knock that at all. But what I do know is this defense has been together for 4 years. And this defense, as I've said 100 times over these podcasts, that this defense underperforms year in and year out. I don't care how they finish statistically. My eye test tells me we're not a good defense. We play well, and we stack numbers when we play poor offensive teams or bad quarterbacks. But when it's time for us for this defense to make a case and play against the top offenses in the league, we get killed. We get cooked. And right now, averaging probably giving up 30 points a game, you can't leave the defense the way it is. You got to shake it up. And I'm not saying that Chase Young and Montez are bust, but there was no way in hell that they can continue with these same 4 guys. And I can never understand how or why, and we're about to find out. But when Chase and Montez, or Chase was out, and Casey Tuhill and Abada and all those guys that kind of fill in opposite of Montez Sweat, somehow the defense just played well. And I'm not saying that they're better than Chase Young, but you know what? The proof was in the pudding. My eye test told me that defense looked a hell of a lot better. And it's no different than when the cornerback from last year, the top free agent, they traded the guy, they released him.
Jackson.
And all of a sudden the defense start playing a little bit better. It's like sometimes, man, you can get addition by subtraction here. And I wonder, specifically with Chase, is this a situation where there's addition by subtraction? Because not long after Chase was released, Adam Silver, I think is his name, released a report talking about how sources and coaches within the locker room talked about how Chase Young was undisciplined. He had a lot of bad habits, and he did a whole lot of freelancing. And supposedly that do your job sign that Ron put in the locker room was aimed at the D-line, but primarily Chase Young. And we've talked about how he freelanced a lot.
Right.
But talent or no talent, man, if he was out there just wrecking offenses while he was out here freelances, you can deal with that. But Chase Young's stats are very similar to Casey Toohill, and they are not the same athlete.
And they don't play as much. They don't play the same amount either.
And Casey doesn't play near as much.
Correct.
But yet his numbers are just as good as Chase. And so again, I'm not gonna pay a guy $20 million when I'm getting the same production out of another defensive end. Right. And I know it sounds like I'm hating on Chase, but what I didn't like for Chase, if Chase out here freelancing, man, this can't work. And so addition by subtraction, I was totally 100% okay with these moves, man, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think a couple things here. I don't expect the defense to drop off terribly. Because we've seen it, right? We've seen it in the past. Now, granted, it was for 4 or 5 games, but the defense was playing well when Montez and Chase were both out. And we thought, man, if they're playing this well now, they weren't perfect, they weren't dominating, but if they're playing this well now, when Chase and Montez come back and they go up another level, man, there's going to be something special. And it never happened. It never happened. They were never difference makers. Did they get sacks? Yeah. Did they get, when we were up by 1 and the other team had the ball with a minute and a half to go, Montez and Young, where were they? Rarely were they making an impactful play. And that's what I want. That's what I want when I'm paying a defensive end 22, 24, $25 million, like they're probably going to be asking and potentially getting. Hey, if they can get the money, go get it. But I think what else this does, this trade does, you talked about the draft picks that we have. If you go with our own draft picks, that gives us 5 in the top 100, 3 in the top 50. You mentioned about having roughly $90 million in salary cap. If Josh Harris and crew decide to get rid of our current GMs and our current coaches, we got new ownership. Dan Snyder, the anchor, the poison is gone.
All the negativity is gone.
Josh Harris has a track record with the other teams that he has owned, right? They see how successful they are, that they make the right moves, that they let the coaches and the GM do the work. He's not I'm not saying that he's not involved, but he's not an intrusive owner. And so with all those draft picks and the
young quarterback,
the cap, and then you can evaluate the quarterback here at the end of the year. Now you've got a chance at one of the higher profile GMs, one of the higher profile coaches. You're a destination that people might want to go to rather than, well, I don't have anywhere else to go. I guess I'll go to Washington. And that's how it feels, how it's felt, and how it seems like it's been. There's been no evidence otherwise. I mean, when you look at some of the quarterbacks, the big name free agent quarterbacks, they were never tied to Washington. Never. That could possibly change now. So time will tell, but there's a change here, and everything is reflective of change in a positive way for the future, as far as I see it at this moment. Yes, you got to hire the right GM, you got to hire the right coaches, and have the right approach. But
he's got to make the right draft picks. Right?
Correct.
They still got a job to do, but it's an attractive job now to come to Washington.
And I will say once again, when Josh Harris and crew came on, we talk about the honeymoon being over. Well, the honeymoon is over, and they're doing something, right? Right? They did everything right, PR wise, just small little things, recognizing, bringing in players, doing everything for the fans. And now they're looking at the future of the team to be successful by making these kind of moves. They're not just resting and going, yep, we'll deal with it at the end of the season. They see an opportunity and they're going for it. to
Correct.
improve the team in the future. So I
Correct.
think once again, Josh Harris and the leadership have done a great job under the circumstances that they're in at this moment.
Yes. And as you see over my shoulder here, I got my Chase Young poster here. I'm gonna have to do something with it. He didn't play for us anymore, but I'll keep it.
Yeah,
But yeah, you see it hanging up there, man. I had high hopes for the guy, and I wish him all the best, man. But sometimes a change in scenery, is good for everybody. You know, you hope that Chase Young continues to grow as a person and as a player, and maybe as a pro, he may realize, yeah, I was the number 2 overall pick, man, but guess what? They'll move you too.
right.
And so he may learn from this experience and be a better player for the 49ers or wherever team he goes. Because if he doesn't do what he needs to do in San Francisco, think about it, he'll be on his 3rd team in 2 years.
Yeah,
And that ain't a good look, man.
right.
People start questioning more than just your knees when all of a sudden you can't stick with the team that drafted you number 2 overall, a team traded for you, especially a place like San Francisco and their organization, and then they chose not to offer you a contract extension. I got a lot more questions to be asking about Chase Young.
Right.
So, but let's
Yeah.
just hope he grows up as a pro,
Chase should
man.
be the next RG3, right?
But my
Hey,
point being, let's
in
just hope he grows up,
second round
and
pick, both had knee injuries, left here, went somewhere briefly, and then never,
number 2 overall pick, not 2nd round pick. You did like I
did
did.
I say the same thing again?
Yeah,
they're both number 2 picks.
yeah.
Uh,
But maybe he'll, like I said, man. Maybe this will be a wake up call from him from the perspective, because right, wrong, or indifferent, man. When people leave, you start hearing things, and there's
right.
already been things coming out that Chase was a little bit worried about getting the bag. He was worried about making the plays, doing all these things for himself, and it was kind of he wasn't quite playing as a leader and a good teammate. Although he was always rah-rah guy on the sideline, but when it came time to play, he seemed to do a little bit more of the worried about me only and not for the team.
Well,
And
he even did that when he missed training camp,
absolutely,
and went and was filming commercials and publicly said, I'm out there making money,
I'm trying to get the bag.
trying to
So,
get the money.
so there you go. But
So,
but at any rate,
but now we turn the page on that because they're not
we
on
got a
the team
game coming
anymore.
up.
Well, they're not on the
Got a
team
game coming
anymore.
up.
And we're moving on to the Patriots. And, for the last 20 years, I never thought I would say this, but the 2-6 Patriots, is Bill Belichick still there? I don't know what's going on. I don't think, I didn't ever think I would see the Patriots be 2-6. Not that they would be still without Brady would be a Super Bowl caliber team. You have ups and downs, but not 2-6.
I was hoping for it. I can't say that I thought I'd see it, especially not with a Bill Belichick led team. But I was certainly hoping for it, because I've never, ever, ever been a big New England Patriot fan, as you personally know this. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a fan of New England. I don't like Bill Belichick. I didn't like Tom Brady, and so I always rooted against them. Um, and so yeah, so the fact that they're 2-6, I'm kind of happy about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But go
Yeah,
ahead.
they've lost 4 out of the last 5. Surprisingly, their one win was against the Bills. And throughout the season, their defense has played solid. It has been a dominating defense, like Belichick has put together some years. But from an offensive perspective, they've only scored 20 point. I'm sorry, they've only scored over 20 points one time all season long. They're averaging 15 points a game. Matt Jones has struggled. I mean, clearly, when you're those kinds of numbers, anything and everything on your offense is struggling. But he has 9 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. That's not a ratio that you want. On third down conversions, they're only 34%. When I talked about Washington last week or two, they were down at that level, and it made for ugly football as we watched. And so a lot of their struggles you could almost take from an offensive perspective, you could take their uniforms in and put burgundy and gold on them, and there would be some similarities,
Don't say that. Don't say that,
Um,
man.
they're they're doing a two-back, primarily a two running back system with Stevenson and the old Cowboys running back Zeke Elliott, and but they're not doing that great. They're both averaging under 4 yards a carry. Again, this leads to their overall offensive struggles.
Yeah. You know what, man? I looked at some of the things about New England, and they're not very good. At the end of the day, they're not a very good football team. There's been questions about Matt Jones, whether or not he's the guy. He's been pulled a couple times during the games. But Bill Belichick continues to come back to him. I had kind of forgot that Zeke played for them until I looked them up a little bit.
Well, there's no highlights. There's almost no highlights.
He's not making any noise up there, as we know. And then, quite honestly, I think he wound up in New England because New England was probably one of the few teams that offered him a contract. So
Correct.
it's not that he wanted to go there and do some things, but it's because that's probably where they offer the most money, or even maybe just an opportunity. It is shocking that a Bill Belichick-led team is this bad. Clearly, everyone thinks that all the success that they had there tends to lean more toward because of Tom Brady as opposed to Bill Belichick. But what this should prove to people is no matter how much, even a great coach needs good players, right? And so with that, Bill Belichick doesn't have good players because he's not. I guarantee he's not coaching any different. He hasn't forgotten how to coach. And the teams in his division have continued to improve because they set the bar. Every year, New England was winning the division, the AFC East division, and Buffalo, Miami, and the Jets were just trying to get up there and compete. And all those teams have improved.
Yeah,
Miami's better, Buffalo's better, and New York is not a pushover. I mean, they're struggling with the quarterback position, but Aaron Rodgers was supposed to have remedied that. But and so now New England is the bottom dwellers of that division, and it's a little bit shocking to see from a Bill Belichick led team.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting. I don't think that this is going to be a cakewalk for us, which again, I said before, there's no team that's a cakewalk for Washington because hell, we're somebody's cakewalk. Going
Hopefully
into this
not
game,
New England this week.
We said that against New York, man.
I said hopefully. So. A couple things also on the other side of the for the Patriots on the other side on their defense. One of their defense has played well this season overall, but one of the big things is they've only had 7 turnovers. They've only created between fumbles and interceptions. They've only been able to get 7 turnovers all season long. If you saw what the Giants' approach was to Washington, get ready for more of that. They are the 3rd highest blitzing team. They're just a notch. I mean, just a small notch below what the Giants do on blitzing. They blitz over 40% of the passing plays or of the plays, period. So hopefully, Washington has made some adjustments with their offensive line. I don't know if they're going to maintain that this week. I'm guessing that they are, based off of a little bit better play last week, but we'll see at the end of the week how they lay out the starting offensive line, and then their run defense is one of the best. I think they might be. They're in the top 5.
We don't run the ball anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, but they're only allowing 3.4 yards. So I would imagine if that's all, if we're averaging those similar numbers or less, that the enemy is going to throw the ball even more
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know,
we don't run the ball,
time will
so I'm
tell.
not
Time
worried.
will tell.
Yeah, I don't.
And I saw a stat earlier today because I know there's been some talk about Sam Howell not being under center. He's taking everything out of in the shotgun. The NFL overall is just over 70% in shotgun these days. That's all
Wow.
plays. That's handoff plays, passing plays, everything. It's 70% in shotgun. So the league is changing. When you see Sam and if you I'm not one of them that really cares one way or the other, but if you're one that says, I want him under center and he'll be able to whatever read the defense differently, as he's backing up he can read and see what people are doing, whatever your reasons are on that. The rest of the league is doing basically what Sam is doing as well. So not that it
Okay,
matters, but
yeah,
out in social media, I have seen people criticize him for always being in shotgun, and I've never had a problem with it. When he's successful, and when he's not, I never blamed it on being in shotgun or being under center. So
yeah. I guess the only thing about being under center gives you is the ability. You don't know if it's a run or pass, but like I said, we don't run the ball anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. Um, God, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about New England. Um, I didn't have it written down. I had something in my mind there as you were talking.
ready
Um,
related to their blitzing, their run D, turnovers. Trying
I
to
don't
trying
remember.
to
I don't remember.
trying to
Yeah, trying to jog my mind here, but that's okay. But yeah, I will say this though: a lot of those stats, man, about what a team has coming into our game, we know we they're gonna double those stats against us, right? They're gonna get
yeah.
sacks. They're gonna probably get some turnovers. They're all the things that they don't normally do. They're gonna do against us because that's just what happened. We're streak busters, man.
Well,
And
we
so,
meet the standard of the people that we play. The good teams, even if we lose, it seems like we play them better. Not
well,
Buffalo, but then the bad teams we will play equally or worse than they will just to uh, play at their level.
yeah,
So uh, before we get to the hottest segment on
most
across the
popular
podcast
segment.
universe, anything else you want to cover? Take care of?
No, not really, man. Not really. Just to reiterate, it's a new era in Washington, man. New
It
era in
is.
Washington, and I'm here for it.
And this might even influence this upcoming segment. You never know. You never know with Reggie, but it's time, guys.
What?
What's your name? What's your number? What's your confidence level that Washington walks away with a win? And
You go
Reggie,
first, man.
you want me to go first?
You go first.
Well, um, it's a head scratcher. Whatever I say, it's probably going to be the opposite. If I say we're going to play tough, we won't. But I think from a defensive perspective, it's going to be a little bit. I don't know about a wake up call is right. Maybe a little shot in the arm. Little. We know that the people that are there know that they're there. They know that they're going to try and get a paycheck next year, right? If you're not paying these two guys, there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and the Two Hills and Abadas and others that you always want to play more. Well, here's your opportunity. Whether you're making money in Washington or you're making money somewhere else, go earn that paycheck. Go earn that paycheck. So I think defensively, I think we're going to play a little bit better. We are playing against what has been a weak offense. And so the two of those combined, I think they're going to play better. Offensively, I'm interested in how they pick up the blitz, right? One thing Belichick can do is put together some schemes for that hurts young quarterbacks. And we don't have the greatest of offensive line, clearly, and we have a young quarterback. So, this may be a low scoring game overall, but I see Washington come out of this. From a confidence level, I'm going to go ahead and do the decimal system here. I'm going to go with a 6.5. That almost feels a little bit high. But I'm going to go ahead with a 6.5 to go up into New England and walk away with a win on this.
Wow. Okay.
And people will say, see, didn't need Chase, didn't need Montez after all. Man, what a great move that was by Josh Harris and crew. That they never missed a step.
I'll be first to say, man, letting good talent walk out of the door is never a good thing. But in this case, I think it is. I do tend to think that the trading away players will be a wake up call for a lot of people, because even if you were not traded, it let you know that the new ownership ain't playing around. And although you were not traded at the trade deadline, you still may not be here next year, because they're going to continue to evaluate over the next 9 weeks. So although you didn't have to change address this week, come January, you still might. But with that, it never fails that when teams and organizations have shakeups, they tend to have that circle the wagon, that rallying that you're referring to. And I think the defense will play better, and I think the offense may play a little bit better overall. That do your job mantra that Ron Rivera talked about, Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams, F.A. Bottle, those guys who were obviously with low-round picks, fighting to be on the roster, fighting for playing time. Those guys were the epitome of do your job. They just came in and did their job, and somehow the defense just seemed to work better.
Absolutely.
Which is why I kind of lean toward this addition by subtraction mindset with the trading of the 2 star defensive ends. But at the end of the day, New England is not a good team. But I also know my team, which is Washington. So with the combination of all of that, Ken, I was probably going to say a 3. But given everything that I just said, it allows me to bump my number up to a 4. I don't have a whole lot of confidence that this team, with everything that I just said, will still put together a win, because I've seen it enough to know that when we thought they should, they didn't. When we thought they could, they didn't. When we thought they would, they didn't. So this is one of those weeks where they should, and I don't know if they will. And so because of that, my confidence is not high. I do think the recipe and the ingredients are there for them to win, but this segment is about my confidence, and my confidence is not very high. So I'm going to bump it from a 3 to a 4 that Washington gets the win.
Wow. I will say that against a bad New England team, if your confidence level is only a 4, that might be the highest the rest of the year. Because we still play a lot of good teams. We play more good teams than we play mediocre or bad teams the rest of the season.
And that's fair, but let me just say this, and I forgot to add, and then they're playing against Bill Belichick. And that's another reason that makes me concerned. But to your point, though, until I said it before, until I see something different, because right now I don't have any confidence in this team.
Sure.
So over the next few weeks, all of a sudden the offensive line continues to play well. The offense gets better. The defense improves, like I think you and I tend to think that they will, because I think the defense is going to look better, right? And so you and I will probably be in the majority, because I think fans tend to be addicted to the big name. Now there's really no big name on our defense. And so, but for me is, I don't care about the big name. Can you get it done?
Right.
And does the defense play well? And so I think the defense is going to play better throughout the rest of the season. And if the offense continues to improve and get better, because again, we've all said if our defense gets better, that's going to help our offense. And all of a sudden,
Right.
Washington starts looking better as a team, then my number may go up. But as of right now, I'm not confident that they're going to do that just yet and put it all together. Because it's like defense does okay, offense is terrible, offense is good, the defense is, and it's just they've never been able to put together a good, complete game. And you can make the argument that they played well against Philly and all that, but the defense still gave up 30 points.
Right.
34 in the first game and 38 in the second game. So they haven't done it as a complete game yet. And until I see that,
yeah. I mean, my 6.5 might be, the knucklehead confidence level. I might be knucklehead of the week with a confidence level that high, no matter who Washington is playing. Because to your point, our track record is not good. Win or lose, our track record has not been good. As far as looking good on the field. But we'll see what happens. And, hopefully we'll come out of this with a win, and not only just a win, hopefully we see some spark somewhere. I would love to have been a fly on the wall after everybody found out, in the locker room that they're doing some lifting and rehabbing and getting their massages and icing down and everything that they're doing on, Mondays and Tuesdays. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the locker room when everybody realized both of them were going, and they all had to have big eyes and going, holy cow, what is going on here? Kind of mentality approach.
Said Josh ain't playing around.
Nope. You better, I bet you there's a little bit extra focus this week. I don't know if it'll show on the field, but I would imagine there's a little bit extra focus watching film and running your routes a little bit sharper and all those little things that you do that you just kind of casually doing. You're not goofing off quite as much.
Yeah. Sitting up straight in the chair in the meeting room.
Yep.
Not slouched down in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good. Hey, whatever works, man.
I agree 100%. 100%. You got anything else today, Reg?
I don't have anything else, man. Just other than let's thank the fans for the folks that are listening to us and following us on social media. Please, if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel so you can get these notifications when we do these podcasts. And if you're just listening to us on your favorite podcast channel where you're just listening and streaming to us, we appreciate you tapping in and giving us a listen. And hopefully we continue to bring good content and entertain you guys, as we do this. We love talking about it because we do it anyway.
Yeah.
So hopefully you like listening to us.
Right on.
So that's all I got, man.
All right. Well, until next time, peace out, knuckleheads.
Peace out, y'all.